Now I absolutely love my Porsche 911, however I'm starting to feel it's looking pretty dated.
Ever since I first laid eyes on the new GT3RS, I couldn't help but be inspired. I mean, the car looks much more modern, very distinctive design features such as the large drag reduction rear wing, active aero. Now in all honesty, I'd absolutely love to own one of these.
One of the reasons why I don't have one,
in terms of money, we have no money.
so it's safe to say I certainly can't afford one, not unless I sold a kidney anyway, and even then I still think I'd be a bit short. However,
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills.
so the best I can hope to achieve on my budget is taking some of that design inspiration and try and incorporate it into my older 2007 Porsche 911. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I made my very own full carbon, lightweight GT3RS style bonnet using nothing but a 3D printer. My journey began with this bonnet by hitting a Google search.
So I started by searching for 3D models of the new GT3RS, and that's where I came across the website Sketchfabs. Now when I clicked on Sketchfabs, they had loads of different models. Some of them you had to pay for and some of them were free. But what I found was the free ones weren't that great, so the more money you paid, the better detail you had. Once I finally found a model I liked, the next stage was open it in 3D software so we can edit it. Now I found Blender, which is a free download, was one of the better ones I tried, and there was loads of tutorials on YouTube how to use it. What you can see here is the complete 3D model. Now I think I bought this for about $15 to $20, which isn't much. Now all I'm interested in for this particular video is the bonnet. So the first thing I had to do was split the bonnet from the model. Now I achieved this by using online tutorials from YouTube. Now you may spot this little cube I've drawn next to the bonnet. I've done this to show you the size of my print bed, which is roughly 300 by 300 by 300 millimeters. Now I've drawn this next to the bonnet just to give you an idea of why I can't just print the whole bonnet. So what I need to do is split it up into sections big enough to print. So using the same online tutorials, I discovered how I was able to split the model into sizes big enough to enable me to print. Once I split the model into big enough sections to print, I used another free software which is called Orca Slicer. This enabled me to create the models to send to the 3D printer. My printer came with a time-lapse feature, which is pretty cool and allows you to see exactly how it printed the part. Once I'd printed all the sections, so on the left here you can see them all scattered about, and on the right hand side I've placed them all together. On the right hand side here is a full carbon fibre outer skin from a previous failed bonnet I tried to make. Here I used a soldering iron to melt the plastic parts together into one piece. Once I joined all the pieces together, I'm then able to move on to figuring out how to join them to the carbon fibre bonnet skin. Now the first thing I did was grab the tape measure, measured the bonnet and tried to decide where I was going to cut holes to allow me to join these plastic parts to the bonnet skin. Once I was happy with my measurements, I took the angle grinder and cut out a hole suitable for the plastic parts I'd made. Next I aligned them with a hole, and once I was happy with the position, I used a hot melt glue gun to bond the plastic to the back of the carbon fibre skin. Now that we have the 3D printed part bonded to the back of the carbon skin, it was time to smooth it all together, and for this I used Bondo or body filler. And once sanded and made smooth, you could see the results. The other side was much easier because you could use the first side as a template and then just flip it round. I repeated the steps for the first half by using body filler or Bondo and then sanded it all smooth. Here you can see I've quickly gone over it with a rattle can black primer just to get it all one colour so we can see what it looks like. Now it's time to test fit to the car and see how it lines up. Well, I hope you agree with me guys, I think that looks pretty good so far. It's got a lot of potential. Now it's been test fitted and I'm happy with how it looks. It's time to get this painted so we can make a mould. The first thing I did was sand it all down again to remove the rattle can paint. And I used a 2K high build primer.
We've got Riviera Blue Porsche. This is the colour the Porsche is. So I've mixed up this blue and let's slap it on.
The decision to paint it blue to match the car backfired and caused me a lot of grief at a later point, and you'll find out shortly why.
There we have it, guys. It's got a fair bit of dust in it, but that's because the garage is a bit of a mess. I didn't clean it up. But in all, I'm pretty pleased. That will polish out nice with a buffer and some wet and dry.
Note guys, at the time of making this part, I didn't actually own two Porsches. This was meant to be my intended build project, so that's why I've painted everything in the old blue.
Once moulded, I'm going to have a V-weave up the middle, which corresponds to the V-weave dip in the roof and the bulge in the spoiler, which is V-weave. These little grooves here is all going to be in forged carbon, which will tie into that forged carbon bit. And then as the weave flows up here, it'll tie into the mirrors. So it almost looks like it was intentionally done on purpose.
Regardless of colour, I think you'll admit it looks pretty sweet. It almost looks factory on the car here. What's your thoughts? Let me know in the comments.
It's time to start making a mould of this bonnet, guys. All the paint is cured, all the thinners and hardeners have evaporated, so it's ready to make the mould. So let me start by showing you the process. Unfortunately, I forgot my mould wax, so I've got here some car wax, which is cleanable wax. It's all the same thing. So we'll just apply a nice liberal coat of this all over, buff it off, repeat that like 4 or 5 times, and we've got no worry then of this part being stuck in the mould. So that's 5 coats of wax applied to the part in total.
Now the part's all polished and waxed, the first stage is adding the flanges round the perimeter. Now I do this by getting some signboard and a hot melt glue gun and just bonding the plastic around the edges to give you a flange surface.
Because I used one big long strip, it was a bit flimsy, so I've just put some diagonal bracings in. You can see here. Guys, as you can see, I've gone around the whole bonnet with the plastic and the glue gun. If I hold the plastic here, you can see it's pretty strong. I can actually pick the bonnet out with it, so it's good enough for the mould process.
Here you can see me adding some fillet wax to the negative areas. Now the purpose of this is to make sure there's no areas where the gel coat and fiberglass can grip round the edge of the part and prevent you from pulling out the mould. And now it's time to mix up some gel coat. For this I'm using a tooling gel coat which I bought from Easy Composites. I can leave a link in the description. This is a much harder wearing gel coat and specifically designed for mould making. To apply this to the part, you use a brush and spread it on evenly, 1 to 2 mil layers, and just apply it the same thickness all over. This tooling gel coat specifically needs 2 coats, so you leave the first coat for several hours to tack and then you apply a second coat.
So I thought I'd share part of the disaster, guys. See that there? That is the paint underneath reacting with the gel coat. It's going to be a bit of a nightmare, but the only option I have is continue, because I can't scrape it all off. I'd have to paint it all again. It'd be a nightmare. So I just thought I'd share it. Not everything goes to plan.
So regardless of the issues we're facing, we have to continue. Now once the gel coat has gone to a tack, we then start applying the fiberglass and the resins. The resin we're using here is exothermic, meaning it creates heat as it cures, so you really need to be quick here as the exothermic reaction can chase you, especially on big parts like this.
Next, before I pop the bonnet out, I'll show you here. So you end up with fiberglass sticking out the end. What I'll do now is get the angle grinder. I'll just clean up all the loose stuff on the edge and just make a nice edge to it. So there's the excess cut off, as you can see on the floor there.
Once the fiberglass is fully cured, you can now start by removing the part from the mould. Now you start by flipping her over and removing the flange plastics. This should remove quite easy because the heat generated from the fiberglass curing process normally softens up the glue. So you just grip hold of plastic and pull it off. Now it's time to remove the part from the mould. Now this is pretty straightforward. All you got to do is get a load of wedges, start sticking them in round the perimeter of the part you use to make the mould, and eventually you'll hear a big crack and the part is ready to come out.
So you can see here the paint wrinkled, and if you pull the paint off, the gel coat's taken the wrinkles of the paint. So I'd have to just Dremel that out and patch it with some gel coat. It's not the end of the world, as you can see there. Obviously that patch in the middle, but in general, a good clean. This needs a lot of finishing off and prep.
So the mould didn't go quite to plan, however perseverance here, we can still save this and it'll still make us a good part. So the first stage here really is trying to remove all the blue paint, and once we remove all the paint we can then try and think how we can repair any damage. So as you can see here, this is the extent of the damage. Now the worst of it is the pickling or wrinkles, because the wrinkles are quite deep and the blue paint is stuck in there. Now gel coat's ideal for a small repair, but this is way too big really, so I'm going to have to resort to something else. And I think, based on the size of this repair, I'm going to use a body filler. I started by using a pick to try and get the blue paint out of the deeper part of the wrinkles, and then I mix up some plastic body filler and start filling in the damage. Now I resort to wet sanding to try and ease the sanding marks created in the surface of the mould, because these will be very hard to remove afterwards.
And I've managed to save the mould.
Once the majority of the repairs are carried out and I'm pleased with the finish, the next stage is wet sanding. I then got out the machine polisher and buffed the surface to a high gloss finish.
Mould's all waxed, prepped, ready to start. So what my intention is to have a V-weave right up the middle, splitting up to these corners. And where these vents are here, and you've got these straight lines, I'm going to put forged carbon inside the two intakes, the vent bits. Takes a bit of time, but I have chopped up some spread toe to make the forged effect. As you can see there, a large box full. What you see me do there, guys, is just mask up the two vent sides, and what that means is when I spray the spray adhesive to glue on the forged carbon, it doesn't land on areas where I don't want it to land, and it just makes sure you keep the other areas clean. Result of nearly 2 hours of hand placing individual pieces of forged. As you can see, it takes a fair bit of effort. So guys, you're probably asking yourself, why do I individually place each piece and take so long doing this? Now I could throw it on like some people do with forged. The reason for this is because I'm trying to get up against this tape edge. If I throw it on and overlap this tape, when I peel this paper off, it'll pull all the forged off with it. So you've got to take your time if you've got a masked up edge. Plus as well, the more time you take over this this level, the better the aesthetic finish will be. Obviously I'm trying to get a certain pattern in my head, and I'm trying to place it to get that pattern, if that makes sense.
Now you'll see me apply a layer of spread toe behind the forged carbon. But the reason why I apply a layer of spread toe on top of the forged is that if I've missed anywhere and you get gaps in the forged, you don't see the cloth I place on top.
Now we've done the forged carbon areas, I'll remove all the masking tape and the paper, and we'll start on the V-weave. So this is the last stage now of the the top surface. So again, you need to take care with this stage. Once you've got this V-weave kind of tacked down and covering the whole mould, the other stages, like the reinforcing stage on the back, less care needs to be taken because you can't actually see them. So this is the last critical stage now to give you the good finish. I did 2 further layers of 210, a layer of Soric, which is that white layer you saw, and then another layer of 210 on top. So that's 4 layers of 210 with the Soric. I think that should be suffice for the top skin of the bonnet. What I'll do now is add the bagging materials. So we've got the peel ply, followed by a breather mesh, and followed by a bag, which is the bag then you suck into the part to get the vacuum. All the vacuum bagging consumables are on. What I mean by vacuum bagging consumables is all these layers after the carbon are disposable, so basically you throw them away. They're only there to do the carbon infusion purposes. What you've seen also is I connected 2 pipes down this end and 1 pipe up this end. These 2 pipes here I'm going to connect resin to pull the resin through, and this one here is connected to the pump that draws all the air out. Now I've drawn all the air out, clamped all 3 pipes off, and what I'll do now is something called a drop test. So I hold vacuum on this. I've got a gauge on here to show how much vacuum you've got pulled in the part, and what I'll do now is I'll go away for about 30-40 minutes, come back and see where this is all nice and tight. Hopefully in 40 minutes I come back, the gauge is reading the same and this is all still nice and tight. If it is, we're ready to pump some resin. If it isn't and it's gone loose, that means there's a leak in there. So what we have to do is take time then to go round the part, squeeze in the sealing bag tape and try and find where that little leak is coming from. So the aim is stop all the leaks and then you can pump some resin. So I'll set my alarm now, 30-40 minutes, go away and come back, and fingers crossed we can pump some resin in. Well guys, it's been 50 minutes and absolutely rock solid, which means we nailed it first time. Now I've been doing this for years, so I'm pretty experienced at this, but for those of you who are trying to do this yourselves, if you do get the bag go loose, just take your time and squeeze all this edging tape and just try and find the leaks. But as far as I'm concerned, this, as you can see, I'm picking the whole mould up here just by grabbing the bag. That's how tight it is. So we are good to go. Let's get some resin mixed up and pump the resin in. So yeah, let's get it done. The resin I use is IN2 infusion resin. This is sold by Easy Composites. Now I'll leave a link in the description below. There we have it guys, 1 successful infusion. Now you'll see it looks really dark and black. That's because the resin now has gone into the carbon and it's coming through the peel ply. So see the black lines? That's the peel ply. Once the resin mixes, it goes quite clear. So as you can see, there's a lot of pink bag. All that pink bag is just where I've had so much bag to make sure we get into these shapes of the vent. I overdid the bag really, but it's quite cheap, so I'm not too concerned of wasting bag. I'd rather have too much bag here than not enough and end up bridging. We are back in the unit guys, and it's been 24 hours since I resin infused this bonnet. As you can see here, it's still looking pretty black, which is good. If any air had escaped, a lot of this black would have gone pink. There's a slight area here, let me see if I can show you. Now see this area here of light pink? That's a bit of air that's trapped in the top layer of mesh. Now if you get air escape into your mould, that will spread and you'll see like a spider's web all over the part. That's not game over, but it's not a good sign if you get a lot of that pink in your mould once you come back. But it's been here in my room now with the heaters on and off today. As you can see here, it's 26-27 degrees. It's been like that for most of the day in here, so this part is more or less cured. What I'll probably do now, before I remove all the vacuum bagging consumables, I will put the diesel heater on in here and get this room up to 50-60 degrees for about an hour, maybe 2 hours, to give this part a bit of a post cure while it's still under vacuum in the mould. Then what I'll do is let that cool down, and once that's cooled down, I'll come in here and start popping out the mould. So here's the raw carbon after the bagging has been removed, and the texture you can see there is the peel ply. with all the force you use to pull the bagging materials off, a good sign of a well done wax or release agent is the part should come loose. So I haven't even tried to wedge this off yet, and you can see the bonnet's ready to pop out. So that's a good sign. What I'll do now is I'll use some of these kind of wedges. I'll wedge and I'll use lollipop sticks all the way around, and eventually you'll hear a big clunk and the part will pop out. As you can see guys, there's a mess. All the vacuum bagging materials, all this gets thrown away, and it's quite rigid, so you've got to break it all up. So it's a messy job, this. That little pin you got there, if you just keep moving around the part with like the wedges, it doesn't take too much force, but eventually she just pops loose. Here we go guys. Nervous and excited.
Note you'll see most of it's shiny and some of the areas are satin or dull finish. Now this is just where I did the body repair or the mould repair. So don't panic, this will come out once wet sanded and clear coated.
Certainly something we can work with anyway.
Here's the part after it's been wet sanded and it's just drying off, and already you can see where the repairs were to the mould, they've already been removed. Once dry, I mixed up some 2K clear lacquer, which is UV resistant, which will aid protecting the carbon from the sun. I applied several coats to get it as glossy a finish as I could. Hope you agree guys, it's looking pretty sweet. The 2K lacquer adds so much gloss and depth, it's unreal. And it's definitely been worth all the hard work to get to this stage. So it's time to move on to the next part, and this is the L-shaped hockey sticks as I call them. Now I 3D printed these at an earlier point in the video, and now I'm just preparing them ready for paint so we can make a mould of these also. I started by applying a 2K high build primer, and then a lessons learned from the first time, I didn't use the blue paint, I grabbed the 2K paint to try not to get any reactions this time, and I grabbed any old colour off the shelf from a previous spray job. Repeating the same process we did for the bonnet skin, so because these parts are quite small, it was easier for me to stick these to a flat piece of plastic to use that as a flange. We went round the part with a fillet wax as per the previous, and applied several layers of mould release wax. Then mixed up some tooling gel coat again and applied 2 layers all over the part.
When applying this guys, you just want an even coat all over. So it's been about 4, maybe 5 hours, and this is tacky to the touch. So it's ready to put some fiberglass on now and build up the mould materials.
Once the gel coat has gone to attack, I mixed up some resin and applied a fiberglass backing layer. Once the fiberglass had cured, we removed the parts, and here we have one finished mould. I started by applying the carbon, similar way to I did to the bonnet, which is forged, backed up with spread toe and then several layers of 210 cloth. I then laid up the bagging consumables. I switched on the pump and sucked out the air. I pumped in the resin. And then I was able to pull off the vacuum bagging materials and we can pop out the part. And I'm pretty pleased with that guys, that looks pretty sweet.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Unfortunately, we're not even close to finishing. We've still got many parts to make. So we're moving on next to the underskin of the bonnet. Now this was a mould I made previously for an OEM bonnet, but we have to adapt this slightly because I don't need the centre part because the new vents will clash. So as per the previous moulds, we start with applying a forged layer, build up the backing layers with using various different cloths, which included a Kevlar layer added to where the hinges go and the bonnet latch. The Kevlar will massively improve the structural properties and strength of the bonnet. I then proceeded to add the vacuum bagging consumables as per the previous parts. I then used the vacuum pump to draw out the air and place the mould under vacuum. And once I was happy with the seal again, I pumped in some resin. I left the part for 48 hours to cure, which included leaving it out in the sun to get a bit of UV heat. I could then proceed to removing the vacuum bag and consumables.
The spiral mesh, once covered in resin, can hinder pulling the peel ply off. That's why you saw me removing it first.
Once the spiral mesh was removed, I pulled off the peel ply.
It's the moment of truth, the exciting part.
I then went round the part with wedges to try and release the part from the mould. And when you hear that big crunch, you know the part's loose.
This is where you find out if your efforts were worth it. First things first, very lightweight. I mean, that weighs absolutely nothing. Ready? Perfect. Now, there's a lot of trimming to do. There's holes to be cut out, holes here, edges to be trimmed, but in all, it's going to be spot on. Let me give you a close-up. Now bear in mind this is fresh out of the mould and it's got a decent shine to it considering. Now you see where there's cloth here. Now I'll trim that bit, that bit, that bit. That's why you can see cloth through it and not forged. Also, where you can see this dimple here, that'll be trimmed. But in general, guys, I mean, considering this is fresh out of the mould, that is pretty sweet, I think you'll have to agree. So let me show you my original bonnet and why there's 4 parts to the mould for this bonnet. So obviously we got the outer skin, which is the one you see here. Now if you look on the side, the OEM Porsche one must be machine pressed and this skin is folded round to do this bit. Now you can't do that in carbon because if I make a mould of all this part here would be trapped inside. So I've made this part separate, this part separate, so 1, 2, opposite side 3, and then the inner skin, which is 4.
Fortunately for me, as I've already said, I've made carbon bonnets for my Porsche before, so I already had the 2 moulds for the end pieces of the bonnet. So I just repeated the previous processes, did a forged layer, several layers of 210 cloth, then added the vacuum bag and consumables, sucked out the air and pumped in the resin. Once cured, we could pop the parts out, and here we have it, 2 forged carbon bonnet ends.
The part you see here in forged carbon is a copy of this bit. Now I messed up, if you really want to be fussy on this. I made this in forged. However, if I bond that to the side of this bonnet, it should have been weave. Now I've got all the parts required to make me a bonnet. This has been months of work, starting with 3D prints to make that mould, and then laying up all the carbon. We're not finished yet, but this is a one-of-one masterpiece, I'd say, guys. I hope you agree. And even got the little L-shaped hockey sticks. So that's my part, and that's my inspiration. That there, see the hockey stick on the bonnet? I mean that bit there. Now this carbon bonnet's got loads of excess where we went over the edges of on the mould. So I need to trim off the excess, trim off some bits in here, and then trim these holes out. Now the holes will reduce the weight slightly, and all the strength's in the bit they've designed anyway. So I need to go around the edges with some sandpaper to tidy it up. I haven't trimmed some of these ones here. I'll do them later on. But I just want to get it on the bonnet now to see how it ties in with the 2 scoops, because obviously the reason why I haven't got nothing in the middle here is because of the 2 scoops. This clash in here. So I just need to trim a little bit off here so it'll slip down past the vent bit. So we're pretty much there now. I've trimmed off, I think, enough to get it to fit. So before I bond this skin to this bonnet here, I've got to drill out the holes for the latch. So fortunately, because the gel coat's pretty good, you can see the detail. But see that screw hole there and that hole there? I've got to drill out and bond in a fastener. So if I show you the mould skin we used, you can see there's two fixings for the latch. Now I need to drill them out and bond in the fasteners from behind. So now I've drilled a hole in the carbon skin. How you fasten this to carbon is by bonding in some fixings. So these here are called fat heads or dead heads, and you can see there's some circles drilled into that plate which is welded to the top. And what that does is when you put epoxy resin on top of it and stick it to the part, it'll grip by gripping these circles that are drilled. So we'll get the skin, bond that to the back, and then that will allow us to bolt this to the front, and that will be a secure fixing. So to bond these fixings to the back of the carbon, you need a 2-part epoxy. Now, I'll use VM100, which is available in Easy Composites. It's a 2-part glue. However, to mix it, you need a nozzle. Now, every time you use one of these nozzles, they're thrown away, and these are about £1 each. So don't be wasteful. If you have got fixings to do, get them all set up and use one nozzle to do it, if that makes sense. You put that nozzle in, screw it in, and then as you pull the trigger, 2 parts of the glue will mix together in the nozzle. So what we'll do, we'll mock it up. I always advise putting the first bit on a piece of cardboard or something so you don't use it, just in case. And this is a close-up to show what it looks like. Next, I'll turn this car around so we can see the front end, and we'll get the bonnet off and test fit it.
Because I've been cutting carbon inside the unit, the car was covered in dust, so as I was driving the car outside to turn it round, I thought I'd give it a quick rinse and a snow foam while I was at it.
So before I strip the bonnet off the new car, guys, I just wanted to give you a glance of the work that's involved to make one bonnet. Now, if we go over here, the first thing you need is a plug. Now this is the part we needed to use to create the mould. You have the outer skin of the mould, which allowed us to create this part. Then you have a mould of the inner skin, which allowed you to create this part. And it doesn't end there. To make the side edges of the bonnet, we needed 2 moulds, one either side. And then, to make the hockey stick L shapes, we needed another mould. Now it doesn't finish there. This is as far as I've got. You've got the 3 vents, or the 3 fins that go in this vent. I haven't done that yet, so that's 3 either side. And then also, because this is a hole, and this is going to leave a hole in the trunk or frunk of my car, I've got to create some kind of funnel to get the water to direct out the front of the car, and also get a way of the air flowing through. So I've got a mould to make of either side of them, and the 3 fins each side. So we're still not in the home straight yet, but look at all this work that's involved just to make one single bonnet. So when someone asks me, oh, can you make a bonnet for my car? You don't appreciate what's involved when making something like this. So the next step is to test fit this bonnet. So we'll start by whipping off the old one. So now we got the bonnet off, let's test fit the outer skin. All I'm going to do for this is just lay it on. I'm not going to attach the hinges, obviously, because I haven't bonded the skins. All I want to do here is test the contours of the wings and the bumper to make sure she follows the lines of the car. I eventually had the idea to place the inner skin in first, click it down with the latch so you know that the gap is right, and then place the outer skin on top. And since doing so, I'm over the moon with the fitment, to be fair guys. I mean, it's still loose, so it's not perfect at the minute, but I think once I've bonded that to the inner skin, I think we're on for a winner. Now in general, it doesn't look like a copy hood. It fits really well, to be fair. So, more than happy with that. Well, obviously at the minute, we've got holes in the bonnet, so any water is just gonna go in there. Eventually, I wanna make two like funnels that's gonna go from the front radiator through the front of the trunk, so air can go up and through into here, and any water that goes in there when it's outside goes down and out the front bumper. But I'll do that at a later date. I've rested the hockey sticks, or the L shapes, in place. Trying to bang the car because they're going to fall off. But I think the forge and the V-weave looks pretty sick. To bond the two parts of the bonnet together, I've used a 2-part structural adhesive, VM100, and a mixing nozzle. And this takes 10 to 12 minutes to start curing, and then you really need to leave it 8 to 12 hours before you apply any strain to it. So I leave this a good couple of hours now before I take it off. Lucky I have some large discs or rotors lying around the garage because they're quite heavy, ideal for this. Now you don't normally bond two skins together like this, you normally use the moulds. However, the dilemma I have is, the mould for the outer skin for this bonnet doesn't fit the inner skin because they're not part of the same bonnet. So I come to the conclusion the only way to do it and make sure it's centralised is doing it this way. So no need to leave a comment, I know this is not the correct way to do it. However, needs must. It's been a couple of hours. I've had the heater on for some part of that just to get the garage up to temperature so it's not so cold in here. It's time to take off the weights. See how it opens up. Pretty pleased with that, guys. Now I just got to bond on the two sides.
So I use mole grips and clamps or anything I can just basically hold the part in place while the epoxy's curing. It did require a little bit of fettling, a little bit of trimming to get it to sit right. But once I found it in the right position, I applied the structural adhesive and clamped it in place. Once one side was finished, I started the other side and just repeated the process again.
Both edge trims now have been curing for a couple of hours, so they're ready to come off. We can take all the clamps off. Time to see if this new bonnet is lighter than the original. Now I'm a bit skeptical because we've got holes in the middle, there's extra material, extra surface area, so I'm not sure if it's going to be lighter than this one. But let me just do a quick check. It is definitely lighter, but not by much. Let's get the scales and do this properly. So we'll start with the original bonnet. Reset this back to 0. 7.5 kilos. 7.5 kilos, time for the new one. So we get just over 4 kilos. Now it's not a massive saving, a couple of kilos, so I think that's a good result. So here we are, back at the whiteboard, and the results are in from the carbon bonnet. Now the OEM was 7.5 kilograms, so bonnet 7.5, and the carbon bonnet was 4.5. So 3 kilos lighter. I think that's a pretty good result considering we've changed the shape of it. As you can see, the V-weave up the middle of the bonnet ties in with the roof, and now you can see my design coming to light and how it all ties in.
We've come a long, long way together, through the hard times and the good. I have to celebrate you, baby. I have to praise you like I should.
What do you think of that, guys? Look at all this. All this was required to make one single bonnet. Right then guys, that's it for this video. However, coming soon is a full carbon fibre front end. See you in the next one.
You got the face that they've been looking for. You're a superstar. You got the face that they've been